Easter was celebrated long before resurrection, hope, or even the term existed. Its oldest form was built on cycles not meant for comfort or for memory. The details remain scattered, deliberately pared down with each retelling. Today's story is just what survived the cutting. But beneath the familiar, a far older bargain lies buried, one whose traces were meant to vanish. What was rewritten, and what remains for those willing to look further back? Each spring, the Christian world gathers to recall a story of resurrection and hope. The narrative centers on a single week in Jerusalem, nearly 2,000 years ago, when the crucifixion and rising of Jesus of Nazareth are said to have transformed despair into renewal. In the earliest Christian communities, this commemoration coincided not with a new invention, but with the ancient Jewish festival of Passover. The Gospels describe the events unfolding as the city prepared for Pesach, a time already heavy with the memory and ritual. Early followers spoke of Christ as the Paschal Lamb, his death and return mapped onto a calendar shaped by older observances. From the 2nd century, Christian groups in Asia Minor marked this occasion on the 14th day of the Hebrew month Nisan, the same day as Passover. Others, seeking unity, chose the following Sunday. By the 4th century, leaders at the Council of Nicaea set a rule. Easter would fall on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the vernal equinox. This decision, rooted in both tradition and calculation, fixed Easter's timing to the shifting sky. In most languages, the festival's name still echoes the Hebrew, Pascha, linking it unmistakably to its Jewish origins. Only in English and German does a different word persist, a linguistic echo that hints at layers beneath the surface. For most, though, Easter remains a season of brightness, the promise of life renewed, and the story that survived the centuries. The calendar itself carries silent evidence of older layers beneath the surface. In the 8th century, a single English monk, Bede, recorded a detail that now stands alone in the written record. He wrote of a month once called Eostermanath, named, he said, for a goddess whose feast had faded from living memory. Bede's words, copied in the margins of a treatise on timekeeping, offer no stories of worship or ritual, only the echo of a name, and the note that Christian observance had borrowed the title of the month for its own spring festival. No other chronicler mentions Eostre. No inscription, no altar, no tale survives to fill the silence. The month name, already archaic in Bede's day, lingers like a fossil in the language, its meaning uncertain, its significance debated. In most of Europe, the festival kept the older name, Pascha, rooted in the Hebrew calendar. Only in English and German does this fragment of a vanished tradition persist, hinting at something beneath the official story. The date of Easter, too, remains tied not to a fixed day, but to the shifting full moon and the turning of the year, as if the new meaning was laid over an older pattern that could not be fully erased. What endures is not the memory of a goddess, but the shape of the calendar itself, layered, inherited, and never quite explained. Late winter in Northern Europe required a kind of calculation that left little room for comfort. Food stores ran low, animals grew thin, and the promise of new growth remained weeks away. For early communities, survival through the hungry months depended on more than planning. Rituals arose not as decoration, but as necessity, responses to the uncertainty of weather, the risk of famine, and the fragile balance between life and loss. Each spring, the return of light and warmth was not a guarantee, but an outcome to be secured. Communities gathered to mark the turning of the season. Their ceremonies were shaped by the needs of the land. The first egg found after months of scarcity, the birth of a lamb, the lighting of a bonfire, these were not symbols in the modern sense, but urgent signs that the world was shifting toward renewal. Blood, whether from animal sacrifice or the slaughter of livestock was part of the cycle, a way to acknowledge the cost of survival and to seek favor from forces beyond human control. Obligation bound these acts together. Participation was not optional. The risk of neglecting tradition could mean a failed harvest or a barren spring. The lunar calendar, the waxing and waning of the moon, set the rhythm for planting, for gathering, for the rituals themselves. Scarcity shaped belief, and belief shaped action. The memory of lean years lingered in every custom, every offering, every shared meal. What endured was not the story, but the pattern, repeated, adapted, and carried forward long after the reasons had faded from memory. Peat bogs across northern Europe have preserved a record that outlasts memory or myth. Bodies retrieved from these depths include Tolland Man in Denmark, Grauballe Man, Clonycavan and Old Crohan in Ireland, and Lindo Man in England. They carry evidence not just of death, but of deliberate ritual. Each was placed with care, their remains marked by violence that resists easy explanation. Tolland Man, hanged with a braided cord, still bears the faint impression around his neck. Grauballe Man's throat was cut, the wound clean and deep, his body left whole. Clonycavan and Old Krogan men suffered wounds in sequence, strangulation, stabbing, dismemberment, suggesting a pattern, not a crime of passion. Lindo Man's skull was fractured, his neck broken, his body positioned in the peat as if to complete a rite. Forensic analysis reveals more than the manner of death. Stomach contents show their final meals: barley porridge, seeds, sometimes meat, foods reserved for special occasions, not daily fare. Chemical traces in hair and nails indicate high-status diets, regular meat, imported oils, a level of care that set them apart from the ordinary. The bodies themselves are free of marks from hard labor, their hands smooth, their fingernails whole. Signs of grooming, trimmed hair, manicured nails persist even after centuries underground. Archaeologists read these details as evidence of obligation, not accident. The careful preparation, the sequence of wounds, the choice of victims from among the privileged suggest acts performed for the community, not against it. The bogs became boundaries between tribes, between seasons, between what could be controlled and what could not. The remains endure a silent confirmation that ritual was enforced by necessity, and that the price paid was real, not symbolic. In the early centuries of Christianity, leaders faced a practical dilemma. Familiar rituals and seasonal gatherings could not be simply erased. Council decrees and missionary instructions reveal a strategy of adaptation rather than confrontation. In the year 325, the Council of Nicaea set Easter's date to the first Sunday after the full moon following the vernal equinox, anchoring the festival to rhythms older than the faith itself. Centuries later, Pope Gregory the Great advised missionaries in England not to destroy pagan temples, but to cleanse and rededicate them, allowing former customs to find new meaning within Christian practice. This approach was not about blending beliefs, but about maintaining continuity. Institutional decisions like these ensured that the outward forms of seasonal observance would survive, even as their meanings were carefully recast. Eggs returned to the table only after the long fast of Lent had ended. For weeks, households set aside what hens continued to lay, since rules forbade their use. By Easter, baskets overflowed with these preserved eggs, boiled, pickled, sometimes dyed in bright colors. Records from the 13th century describe villagers presenting decorated eggs to their lords, a gesture both festive and practical. In royal accounts, Edward I ordered hundreds of eggs to be gilded and distributed among his court. The act of gifting eggs did not arise from distant myth, but from the rhythm of scarcity and release. In German-speaking lands, stories began to circulate of a hare, a creature known for its sudden appearance in spring, delivering eggs to children. The hare's journey across fields and gardens became a folk tale, woven into the softer fabric of a festival that now promised abundance. What had once been necessity became custom, the form enduring even as the meaning quietly shifted. Even now, Easter's oldest layers linger. Rituals were reshaped, never erased. What we celebrate carries echoes of survival and sacrifice, softened through centuries of retelling. Traditions endure by adapting, not by forgetting. The stories we inherit hold shadows as well as light. Some truths remain just beneath the surface.